your God power. Get everything you ever wanted and live the life of your dreams. The Master's Course. Copyright 2010 by Richard Lee McKim Jr. All rights reserved. Let the quest for knowing begin. Step number 3. How did this meaning elicit the necessary responses from the elements of the situation for this result? First, it just so happened that this new doctor, Albert Mason, who remarked that he was rather quote-unquote young and cocky at the time, was on the scene thinking that he could do anything. From what we can deduce, he irritated Mr. Moor, the surgeon on the case, and so the main surgeon wanted to quote-unquote teach him a lesson. So when Albert said that he could cure these warts with hypnosis, the surgeon, Mr. Moor, said, "Why don't you?" What's important to realize here is the surgeon knew that they were not warts, and he knew that they could not be cured, but because of the nature of their relationship, he wanted Albert Mason to find out himself the hard way that it couldn't be done. So as a result, he didn't tell Albert that these were not warts and that it was an incurable genital disease. He wanted to teach this cocky upstart a lesson. Next, since Albert still mistakenly thought that these were warts, and he knew that he could cure warts, he continued and performed the hypnosis with every belief and confidence in its successful outcome. He might have also been extra diligent in an effort in order to show off in front of the surgeon. It was only after his success that he became aware that the disease was not warts and that it had a very good and justifiable reason that it could not be cured. He was still able to finish with the boy because even though he now knew that it was not curable, in the boy's case it clearly still was. All the other cases that came to him after that were incurable. Probably, number 1, the patients knew that it was incurable, meaning equals no cure possible. And number 2, the doctor now knew that it was incurable, meaning equals no cure possible. If anything different had been elicited from these elements of the case, the boy would have died. If the boy himself had been told in a clear and definitive way that he was incurable, so that he believed it, he would have died. If the doctor, Albert, hadn't been so darn cocky, the surgeon might have told Albert that they were not warts, and the boy would have died. If Albert himself hadn't mistaken them to be warts, he would have died. Every single part of the cure was elicited from each element in the situation perfectly, as it always is. Like the band, each person in this situation had a certain response elicited from them that contributed to the overall resonant response and result. Like the pain example, there is an infinite combination of possible responses that can be elicited from any situation. In this case, a personality conflict erupted between the doctors that benefited the boy. Who would ever expect a personality conflict to play such an important role in the cure? But that was what was required and elicited to have this favorable result. There's another story that I am told is true by a friend of mine in New York named Ray. Even if it is not, we don't care. Remember, we are creating realities that are based on belief and not what did or didn't really happen. This woman, a street woman I think, was walking down the sidewalk in New York when she came upon a lottery ticket on the ground. She picked it up and checked it out at the store, and it was the winner. How about that story? Now, let's analyze this situation to see what possible elements and responses were elicited to create this result. First, the main character in whose reality was the basis of the event was the woman. She obviously had a meaning that anything could happen for her. Quote, "You never know, something good just might happen," unquote. For most people, including me, who find a lottery ticket on the street, we naturally assume that it's no good. Who would throw a good ticket on the ground? But for her, in her reality, amazing things are possible and could happen for her. It is only from this place, this meaning, that she would have ever picked up the ticket in the first place. However, picking it up is not nearly as important for our discussion as the fact that she even noticed it in the first place. I'm sure that hundreds, if not thousands of people had walked over it without notice or without the thought of picking it up. It was resonating with her meaning of happiness, wealth, and prosperity. Those meanings caused that ticket to glow in the psychic realm and stand out from the rest of the meaningless information and elements in the situation. Because that was the meaning that it resonated with, it was also the meaning that elicited her action to go and check it out. That gut feeling is a resonance response. It is a feeling of resonance which could indicate something good or something bad. In her case, she probably got a gut feeling of excitement and followed through on it. Now, let's look at the person who lost the ticket. What were their vibrational meanings? Why didn't they cash the ticket themselves? First, we know that they actually had the winning ticket, however briefly. How did that happen? They must have had a meaning of, quote, "I have good things that happen for me," unquote. That would explain getting the ticket in the first place, but why did they lose it? I'm quite certain that their meanings were something like this, and this unfortunately is very common among reality creators. They probably thought, and even said on a regular basis, quote, "I always get so close. It is just my luck. Right when I have success in my sights, I lose it. Opportunity always seems to just slip through my fingers," unquote. Does that sound familiar? He must have had the winning ticket in his hand as he pulled something out of his pocket, and it quite literally slipped through his fingers onto the sidewalk. He elicited from himself the loss of the winning ticket in the same way as a sick person elicits from themselves a healing effect by the meaning of "I'm cured." Whenever you go about making statements about yourself and your world, you are creating your reality whether you realize it or not. Your seemingly harmless remarks could cause more than just the loss of money. It could cause your death. What about the alligator wrestling guy, Steve Irwin, who died from a stingray? He was always wrestling huge alligators and other fierce animals that could have easily killed him, and yet they did not. But then a fluke accident with an otherwise harmless stingray killed him? How do you explain the vibrational logic in that? News story, Cairns, Australia. Steve Irwin, the hugely popular Australian television personality and conservationist known as the crocodile hunter, was killed Monday by a stingray while filming off the Great Barrier Reef. He was 44. Irwin was at Bat Reef off the remote coast of northern Queensland state shooting a segment for a series called Ocean's Deadliest when he swam too close to one of the animals, which have a poisonous barb on their tails. His friend and colleague John Stainton said, "He came on top of the stingray, and the stingray's barb went up into his chest and put a hole into his heart," says Stainton, who was on board Irwin's boat at the time. Experts agreed Monday that Irwin's death, he was struck directly in the heart, witnesses said, was extremely unlucky. "It was extraordinarily bad luck," said Sean Collin, a University of Queensland marine neuroscientist. "It's not easy to get spined by a stingray, and to be killed by one is very rare." Okay, first of all, as always, it was no accident.
To continue, go to How to Use Your God Power, chapter number 11, segment number 26. Let your quest for knowing continue.